want to create a beautiful parcel that will bring happiness to someone else or yourself, to create seeds of inspiration that someone can use in their journal. These are the pockets of happiness. These little parcels are created to inspire you, to bloom your creativity, and to give you happiness while you're creating them and using them in your journal. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Amity Bloom. My name is Nazi, and I wanted to take some time to create another project with you all. I wanted to take a break and just play around with my scraps that I had left over from creating the journals, and as well as some other projects. Scraps are a great tool to use when you are a little bit intimidated to create a project. Start out with scraps. I can't express that enough, especially if you're a beginner or even if you're experienced. When you have a pile of scraps in front of you that are already cut, such as this right here, these are pieces of paper that are already cut. There's scraps left over, or there are pages that are ripped, or things that would end up in the trash. This is actually the inside cover of a book. You can even see the price up there. And I saved it because I love working with these things when I need a moment to myself to create, because there's no pressure. The pressure is completely out the window of making a perfect project or being scared of ruining your precious papers. When you're working with scraps, the whole process becomes a little bit easier and sometimes more enjoyable. So these are some of the things that I'm going to be using. So I made 3 of them. You can see they're different sizes because I like working with different sized pieces of paper. This way you use your smaller scraps for smaller projects and bigger scraps for bigger projects. And sometimes what's really cool is that something that you would use in a smaller size doesn't go that well with something that's bigger. So I think it's really cool to take a look into that and see the differences. And you'll notice each one is made a lot differently. So going with the first one, it's just a piece of paper that I folded to make a pocket. So I basically took book paper, folded it over. I placed some ledger behind it because it was just blank, just to add some more contrast with the font. And then I took a little piece of my embossed papers and I passed it through my sewing machine. So this allowed for me to have a pocket down here at the bottom and a pocket up here as well. So I have a double pocket here, and you can really add whatever you'd like to your pockets. That's completely up to you. But what I decided to add is a paper postage stamp, similar to the fabric ones that we made a couple weeks ago. I also created some of my little sentiment tags with a printable that I actually just recently created, and I'll share that with you later on. And then of course the tag, you can never go wrong with the tag. Tags are awesome. And just a piano paper floating pocket. And then I actually made the smallest one second. It seems like there's 3 pockets, but in reality it's just 2. But you create the illusion of 3 by the way that you place your papers. So let me take my little ephemera out of my pocket of happiness. And you basically take some craft paper, fold it over, add some vintage paper. Me personally, I love the look of it, so I decided to decorate the bottom pocket. Then I took some tea-stained paper, added it on here, and this is just the craft paper. Passed it through my sewing machine, and it allowed me to have 2 pockets. But you get the illusion of 3. Let's say this was your journal page and you were to glue this on your page. You then would be able to have 1 pocket in the back, the second pocket here, and the third pocket here, which is what I love about these pockets. You can use them as a floating pocket, or you can glue them and attach them to a page permanently or temporarily just with a paper clip. So I really love the way that you can adapt this to suit your needs and your journaling needs. And then this was the little sentiment tag that I made. I changed it up a little bit and I added some wallpaper on the edge and used a scrap piece that already had a font to it, but I loved it. And instead of like music paper, I used some embossed paper. So I really enjoyed the look of that one. And same technique, as you can see, but completely different look. And you can't forget about the little bunny ears. I like to call these little bunny ears when you put fabric or textiles or thread up at the top. So with this one, I took some ledger paper, some vintage ledger. I folded in half, passed it through my sewing machine. Here's a little text spot that I've also glued on the edge, passed it through the machine, and I've left the other side open, so if I wanted to, I could put a postage stamp and place it like that as well. So it's completely up to you if you want to create a text spot, and if you do, if you want to close it completely, or if you want to leave it open. Then what I thought would be really fun is, instead of putting my sentiment phrase on my little tag, I wanted to add it on the top by creating a little flip. So this is the sentiment that I chose. Choose what helps your heart bloom. And then that opens up. And you see that you have another little surprise. A little tag made out of some scrapbook paper and your sentiment tag. And this one doesn't have a phrase on it since, like I mentioned, the phrase is on the front. But you can go in and journal on the little sentiment tag as well. So this is just something so cute that I wanted to share. It's kind of like a little puzzle piece that you put together using the things that you have left over, and you turn it into something that's so magical and special. And I like to call them floating pockets of happiness. And you essentially have a little parcel, a little piece of happiness, because when someone sees this or you share this with someone and they go through, even though it's small bits, there are 3 elements in here, they will fall in love with every element because they can tell that every piece was made with love, and it will make them happy. So I wanted to create these and call them floating pockets of happiness. So these are the 3 that I made, and I want to make the 4th one with you so that you see the process and you can make it in your home as well. When you're making your pockets of happiness, the first thing you want to decide is what size of pocket you want to create. This will determine the size of your scraps that you're going to use. The pocket that I'm going to be making, I'm using scraps left over from an inner book sleeve, and I'm going to be covering the white portion with a book paper page from that same book. I like doing this because it adds more interest to the back part of that page instead of just staring at a white blank canvas. Now I'm taking some embossed paper that I have left over from a project, and I'm just cutting it with my scissors. You don't need a fancy paper trimmer, you can just fold and cut, or you can even tear if you want a more rustic effect. I like to put a little bit of glue on the sides since I am going to be making a little belly band out of this, just to temporarily hold it until I take it to my sewing machine, but you can skip this step and permanently adhere it with double-sided tape or with a strong adhesive, or if you want to take it through the sewing machine, you can do the same thing that I'm doing. Now I'm taking some ledger, and I want to cut off that little snippet up at the top, and I want to add it on the bottom portion just to add another layer of paper at the bottom. Sometimes I like to collage papers together, and when you're creating your pockets of happiness, you want to make sure you have different types of papers. And this way it's not just the belly band that's the focal point. Every paper that you collage adds more interest to your pocket page. Now I'm taking it through my sewing machine on the sides. I like to use contrast stitching just to make it pop a little bit more. And I'm taking this book page by Edith Holden, and I'm taking my tag that I've already made previously and using it as a template, just using my scissors to trim around it. And this is the easiest tag to create in the world. It takes less than 1 minute, as long as you have a template and the paper that you'd like to use. I'm also using some hole reinforcers that I stained myself. So these are just regular Avery sticker brand hole reinforcers that I've used to stress stains on them to give them more of a vintage effect. And then I take my hole puncher and you have a really cute tag ready to be used. It's time to create our paper postage stamps. I'm using a technique similar to the ones that I shared for creating my fabric postage stamps. You want to take some scrapbook paper, a basic scrapbook paper, and you want to trim or cut around it with some pinking shears or some designer scissors that have a really cute little design on them. Scallop scissors work great too. And I'm using some vintage wallpaper, cutting it into a square following the silhouette of my postage stamp, the backing, and I'm just gluing it on. Really simple, but has such an elegant and beautiful effect, and it's so addicting to make these. Now I'm taking a postage little stamp and adding the little logo in the stamp in the corner, kind of like the traditional postage stamp that you see on most envelopes. And the last step is to create our sentiment tag, our little phrase tag. Picking out some scraps from a little scrap bowl, I have this piece of cardstock that I really liked the tone of paper. I felt like I needed to introduce a slightly darker paper to even out all of the tones. And I'm choosing which decorative paper to add on the edge. I was really wanting to use this musical paper, it was just too intense. The musical notes were just a little bit too dark for the page, and I thought I would go with the more neutral vintage tones. This one isn't as intense, so I'm using some glue, putting my piece of paper inside of it and overlapping. So you're sandwiching your long piece of paper that's going to become your tag. You can really choose whatever paper you want to put on the edge. Embossed paper, scrapbook paper, vintage papers. It really just depends on what style you're trying to go for. And I like to put a hole reinforcer and hole punch it, trim it to the size of my pocket, and you can decide if you want to place it in your pocket or if you want to attach it with a little paper clip. But I want to continue to decorate my little tag. After all, it is a sentiment tag, and we need to add a little bit more decoration and a sentiment phrase on. So I'm taking some really old French paper, and I'm deciding which part of it to use. And I'm gluing it on. Very simple. There's no sewing required, which is really fun. You just need a glue stick. Now I'm taking my printable. This is page 2 of my new sentiment phrases, journal phrases and sentiments. And this one is the seeds to bloom, and each one has to do with a particular concept. So this one's for blooming, the other one is for growth, for love, for happiness. And what I love about these phrases is that they're typewriter font, and I space them out so that you can go in and cut them in between the actual phrase. So you can use it as is, as it's designed, or you can trim them individually and create your own phrases, which is really fun. My most favorite part is that there's no background image, so you can print these out on tea-stained paper, vellum. I'm using cream paper because I think it matches the overall color palette really well. And you can have so much fun with these in your journal, in your art journal, even in your planner. So those are the sentiment phrases that I chose from the Bloom pack, the Seeds to Bloom. I will leave a link below to where you can purchase and download the journal, sentiment, and phrases. And now I am combining all of my cute little elements together for my pocket of happiness. I ended up choosing that green postage paper stamp instead of the pink and blue one that we made. As you can see, the color scheme goes better with the other pockets, so I decided to use the green one. It went better with the tag and overall with the pocket. So now I'm just filling in a couple of empty spaces to give you an idea of what it can look like when you fill it up with cute bits and pieces of ephemera. And imagine receiving that little parcel in the mail. It makes me so excited and so happy to the possibilities. And I want to show you how it looks like in your journal. You can use it as a page. You can flip it, tip it in, glue it onto a page. There's so many things that you can do with these. Keep it as it is as a pocket, or take your ephemera out of it and use every single piece as an individual decorative element. So our phrase tags, you can use it as a tab, as a text spot, as a title page. That's why I love these pockets of happiness, because they serve as little seeds of inspiration that in turn boost your creativity, and you will feel much happier and fulfilled. So I really hope that you guys adored this video and that you try some of these ideas out and create your own pocket of happiness. Make sure you check out the printable below, and also the Artist in Bloom course. Remember, there's 1 week left to use the early bird price coupon, so definitely take advantage of that when you can. And until next time, I hope that you guys have an incredible day full of peace and love, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.